Okay.
All right, here we go. So, as I was saying, the interview is for my class at Berklee College of Music, and the questions are based on my class subject, developing your art history. And Danny Mars is running the class. He's a R&B, I believe, R&B bass player. Um, what I was saying before is you have an amazing career. You've played with Michael Jackson and Jeff Beck, and do you feel like the playing with Michael Jackson parlayed you into your dream career with Jeff Beck?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, well, Jeff wasn't even a dream that I had, you know. He always played with keyboard players, not guitar players. So I never even considered that I could end up in his band. And it was just my goal to get an autograph. That's all. Um, I will say one of the reasons he chose me is because not specifically that I had played with Michael Jackson, but that I had had that kind of stage time, and I wasn't going to freak out being on a stage with him. You know,
Right.
if you're just one of these people that only plays on Instagram and you've never played on stage, that can be a real problem.
Oh yeah.
The fact that by the time I played with Jeff, I had done two Michael Jackson tours, that made him feel more comfortable.
Right. So you were
Well,
a seasoned pro by that point.
what's that?
You were a seasoned pro by that
Well,
point. Yeah.
more seasoned than if I hadn't done it for sure. Um, but I just wanted to meet him. And when I was on the Bad tour, one of our guys, the Rory Kaplan, keyboard player, had done some tech work for Jeff when he was with Jan Hammer, and he said he could introduce us, and then he didn't do it. And so I thought, well, damn it. The next Jackson tour that came up, the Dangerous tour, I knew we were going to England, and I knew he lived in England. So you put those two together, that there's got to be a way that we can connect. So every show we did, after the shows, there was always reps from Sony and Epic there. So I asked everybody if they had connections to Jeff, and eventually somebody came through, and I was able to get him tickets to a show we did at Wembley Stadium. But we had two opening acts that went on, and then Michael canceled the show. So I found out that Jeff had come to the gate right after the announcement of the cancellation, so they turned him away. So I called him up and said, I don't know when or if we're going to make up the show, but can I come meet you anyway? And he was very kind. And the next day, I went to the studio that he was recording his rockabilly record at and just hung out, watched him record a bit. He drove me back to the hotel in his Batmobile Corvette at 100 miles an hour. And I got my autograph, and that was it. I thought I'd never see him again. But I was able to give him a copy of my first CD that had just been released. And I also had just received from MTV in the UK. I had done an interview there, and they were also putting my video for Flight of the Bumblebee up on the midnight hour. So they gave me a copy of the combination of my interview and that video. And it was in there's a different format in America, at least with VHS at that time. It was called PAL over there, and it's NTSC over here. So I knew I couldn't see the video anyway if I took it home. So I gave him a copy of that and a copy of my record and thought he'd probably never listen to it, but at least I met him. Well, he did listen to it. And a month or two later, he called me up and said, I finally listened to your record and I want to do a record with you. And of course, I just peed my pants like you would. And it was actually 5 years before we played together. And he had several tours in the meantime. He did a tour of the States with Santana, double headliner thing. And I talked to him then and one other time. And every time I saw him, he'd always say, we're going to do this thing. And I thought, well, it's just because I'm in his face right now, right? I know what it's like to be inspired, and then a year later, you're onto something else. Well, 5 years later, he called me and said, I got a tour of Italy, let's go. And I thought he was nuts. I thought I had never played with him before. How could he have that much confidence? And at that point, I had done another Jackson tour, and I had another CD out. So it was just the combination of those two CDs that gave him confidence, but I didn't have confidence. So I actually I was going to Italy to do a session, and I booked myself to England to go to his house, and I learned most of the Guitar Shop record, and I just wanted to play it in his presence, forcing an audition on myself just to make sure he wasn't nuts. So, needless to say, it worked out well, and the next thing I know, I'm on tour with Jeff Beck for 3 years, and we did two records, and it was really a wonderful experience. I mean, of course, the playing was incredible, but just being able to hang out with him on a bus and hear his opinions of music, and he'll
Now,
listen to anything.
did you have the same thing with Michael Jackson? Were you able to
No,
get opinions? It was different dynamics, different relationships.
no. Here's a little insight to the difference between the two tours. Jeff had, I think, 12 people total, two buses, six people on each. Our bus was the band and managers, and then the other bus was the roadies. With Michael Jackson, there was six semis worth of gear. There was 100 people on the entourage. I mean, people assigned to your hair and makeup, catering, carpenters, techs of every level, and we took up three hotels. And 99% of the time, we weren't even in the same hotel with Michael, which was
Wow.
great because it was way more expensive. I mean, like $10 for a cup of coffee, no thanks.
Did you feel more like just a hired gun with Michael Jackson opposed to being with Jeff Beck? Did you feel more of like part of, a group with Jeff Beck, or did you feel like hired gun with him as well?
No, it was night and day different. Everything about it, from the music to the vibe, was completely different. Because Jeff would hang with us. You know, we'd have
Right.
dinner with him. We'd hang out and party with him after the shows. With Michael, he had to leave the stadiums before the last song was even done, just for safety. He would be in this unmarked van and scoot out while we were still playing Man in the Mirror. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So was Michael Jackson like really strict with rehearsals as far as rehearsing? What was his work ethic like? Was it in par with your work ethic, or was he over the top, like a perfectionist?
I wouldn't say it's over the top, and that's one of the biggest takeaways from working with him is realizing the importance of rehearsal. And I have never rehearsed so much with any act ever. There was a solid month where the band was by themselves, dancers in another room, singers in another room, learning the live versions of basically the Victory Tour that he had done with his brothers. Plus, we added a few songs that had been released from Bad. And then there was another month with in a giant sound stage with all the special effects and the pyro and the lasers and costuming and all that. And before we left for Japan, we were doing the entire show twice a day. So the result, prior to that, I had been in bands where everybody's schedules are all over the map. And when you want to play a new song at a show, you get together that afternoon, go over it a few times, and then play it live that night and hope that you can remember it. With Michael, we went over everything so many times. And
Like one song you kept repeating over and over. So were you so sick of it after a while, doing the
no,
same thing? Never got sick of it?
no, and I've heard that over the years where people say, "Oh, I don't want to be over rehearsed." I have not
Perfect.
once felt I was over rehearsed. I always feel like another shot at playing the song is another shot at perfection, which is never going to happen. So,
Right.
when you learn something, there's a synapse connection in the brain when you learn something new for the first time, and over time, over repetitions, it gets bigger. So you can kind of think of the first time as the size of a hair. Then after 20 repetitions, it's more like a string. And then 60 repetitions, it's like a rope. And then eventually it's a chain. And provided that you are playing things correctly, once you get on stage, you got it. Now, if you're screwing up, then you're programming your brain like a computer, and you've got one file, one folder that is the correct way, and one folder that's got your screw ups. And when you're on stage and the adrenaline's hitting you and the cortisol is in your body, your brain doesn't care which file it draws from. So that's why
Right.
it's so important when you're learning things to play it slow and perfectly.
Perfectly. Instead of playing through mistakes.
Yeah, man.
repeating.
Every time you play it wrong, it's a program.
Exactly, right. That's amazing. So when you going back to the GIT, when you first went there, you first applied, you were turned down, and then you went back 6 months later. You didn't give up. You fought to get back in
Well,
to be able to re-audition, right?
yeah, well,
So
I wanted to get into the school, and I had taken lessons ever since I was 8 years old. In local music shops and local teachers, and what they taught me was a lot of techniques, a lot of songs, pentatonic scales, blues scales, but never diatonic scales, never chord scales, never harmonic minor, never
were you
those.
able to connect it in the beginning when you were learning? Were you able to connect the theory of it with the actual playing, like in the get go? Did you match it up? Would you?
Well, when I started with GIT, they got into theory right away and got it
Yeah.
to play over jazz changes right away. So it was all theory. It sucked. I mean, my first solos, I didn't have a clue. There was no freedom at all. It's like, okay, you're playing over C major 7, so here's the C scale, and then here's this scale, and very stiff and uninventive because I was just learning those tools.
Right, right. Now, do you think it's better to learn a repertoire of songs early on when you're first playing, rather than just to have a foundation and then move on to being original, creative? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you can't output until you input. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
I
You hear a lot of people say that, oh, I'm not influenced by anybody. I've done it myself.
yeah,
I
those people are completely full of shit.
yeah, I didn't want to name names, but yeah, I've heard that, and it's just like, really, you have no influence, nobody influenced you. So
Yeah,
I always thought,
nobody is original. You,
yeah,
you
right,
you can trace everybody back. Now, what they might mean is that they didn't sit down and learn somebody's solos note for note. A lot of people can input by listening. Jeff is one of those people, although he did learn people's solos. Um,
what he did in the beginning.
sure.
He had a foundation. Who was his foundation?
Well, he never took any guitar lessons, so he was self-taught completely. And he's a really sensitive soul where he can listen to something and listen at a deeper level than a lot of people would hear things at. He'll listen to everything from the Spice Girls to Ornette Coleman in the same day and be able to pick up something from the Spice Girls, and it might be only the EQ of the snare that he really digs.
Wow, and he puts it all together. Yeah, a creative thing.
I've seen him at rehearsals go off and goof, and he'll do an imitation of Keith Richards and sound exactly like him, and do Hendrix and sound exactly like him, just because he had that sensitivity level to know what's involved in making those sounds.
Right, right. So do you feel that there are some musicians that never learned how to read music, and they're just amazing at playing and hearing. And, do you think that they're lacking in anything without the knowledge of theory and music and applying it? And,
The only thing they're lacking is having the access to written music. That's all. Jeff doesn't
right.
read. Alan Holdsworth didn't read music. I mean, the whole point of music is playing music, and it that was not a detriment to them.
Right for them. Do you feel like it's opened up a world to you personally? And how
Um,
you,
well, yeah, in the beginning, because I don't know when tab was invented, but I learned to read notes from like day one. And
yeah,
so I had access to all these songs. I learned some Paganini stuff. I read a bunch of Charlie Parker solos. So I was glad that I had that under my belt, but I haven't worked on it in years, and I haven't needed it in years.
even
I'm,
needed. But
people
what
will
about
send me tracks to solo on or to develop, but nobody. I don't think. Wow, with a few exceptions, like well, here's a great example. Okay, I got a gig with Jeff Lorber, and I was given all the sheet music And there were several songs I was supposed to play unison lines with sax and piano. And if I couldn't read, that's just a lot more work. Just going over repetitions of hearing, transcribing, playing it, memorizing it. Um,
Memorizing. If you can't read, you have to memorize stuff, and that's probably way harder. And that's when tab came in. You can use that as like shorthand or to to look at it and memorize, help you memorize. It's like shorthand for music, basically. I don't know. Did you ever use tab?
I never use it. I write it out for people that don't read music. But, when you see tab, it's somebody's opinion of where on the neck you should play it, and it's not always
Right,
correct. In fact,
right.
I've worked with a software called Progression that it's a notation software. So I can play a passage and it will notate it, and you can also choose tab. And if you don't like the area of the neck that it ended up in, you can hit guess again and it'll move somewhere else, but you only get two choices.
That's pretty cool. What's the name of it? Progress.
Uh, yeah, Progression. It's by a company called Notion, I think.
Oh, okay. That sounds pretty cool. It's like
There's a lot
creating.
of programs that'll do that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So going back to GIT, you finally got in, and do you think that if you didn't go to GIT, you would be as successful as you are? Like, did it open up opportunities for you with connections and whatnot?
Yeah, there's no way I would have got the gigs I got without having that education. No way in hell. Because one of the most important uh, classes was transcription, learning how to hear and how to write down music. That part was super tedious, but I ended up writing books. I wrote down every solo from Van Halen's 1984, which was a slice of hell, but
Oh, you
rhythmically.
so you wrote books for there was a company called Cherry Lane who did a lot of books. I know a guitar player that wrote for Cherry Lane, and it was pretty good. What was it? What was the name of the company you did the for yourself?
Uh, my first book was out with REH Publications, and they sold. It was a tapping book, and they sold that to Hal Leonard. The Van Halen thing never came out. Long
Oh,
story.
oh,
Yeah, it's just scratchy handwritten stuff at this point.
so I don't mean to bounce around, but I just had a thought. Did, when you auditioned for Michael Jackson, did you ever get the tape of your actual audition?
I did,
Like,
yeah,
did?
yeah.
Is it? I was trying to look it up and I didn't find anything on it at all. So I was like wondering if if it was good or like if you were embarrassed by it and wanted to hide it or
I
like
have some of it. When lockdown happened, I started a YouTube. Well, I have a YouTube channel, but I started a playlist called "Cat." So this one time, a cat, very valley talk, and in it, I have part of the audition tape clips. I didn't see it for 20 years, and when I saw it, it is kind of funny because I
were you
was trying
cringing?
to look cool and I did not.
Were you cringing or like when you saw it like oh
Actually,
god
no. It's kind of funny because I thought the Beat It solo, which I already knew, was what got me the gig, but I don't think so. I was 99% of that gig is playing funky rhythms, so it's about groove. And then the 16 bars in a 2.5 hour show is the Beat It solo. So I did just okay in that. There was no band, it was just me playing by myself. But I played the Giant Steps tapping solo that I worked out for my first record, and I improvised a bunch of stuff, which I was really deep into tapping at that time. So there was a lot of tapping in the improv. But I think actually the improv was way better than the Beat It solo. Um,
wow.
yeah.
You should be proud of that then, right?
Well, it bought me a house. Let me tell you that.
Awesome. So I heard like recently or a few years ago you started playing with a Michael Jackson tribute or was it a tribute band?
Yeah, I've been asked to play in a bunch of different tributes. Some of them are pretty decent. Some of them really suck. It's
Feel
and a lot of that is on the drummer. If the drummer ain't groovy, there's no way it's going to be a good show. And I'm a gun for hire. I just say yeah because I can fill that date, and sometimes I regret it. But there's one in Brazil. That's one of the last ones I played with that was phenomenal. Rodrigo Teaser. And honestly, there's not a single one of them where I see tapes on YouTube and I go, "Oh, that's amazing," because I played with the real thing, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, didn't it feel weird going from the real thing to playing with the tribute? It's like backwards.
It depends what day you ask me, really.
Yeah, yeah, it must be weird. It
But
gotta feel weird.
honestly, the thing about it is the audience digs it. They don't have access to the real deal. A lot of the audience wasn't even born when Michael was touring, and it makes people happy. I've done like 4 years with an act out of the UK. The guy's name is Navi, Navi, and it's funny because the Brazilian one and the UK one are both called King of Pop, except in Brazil it's in Portuguese. The Brazilian one is the most incredible production I've ever seen. They spent a lot of money to make that stage look incredible. And there's so many people in Brazil that it's not difficult for him to get 3,000 people a night. And Navi tours a lot, I mean, constantly. So we would do a little smaller venues, anywhere from 300 to 1,500, typically, depending on weekday or weekend. But Navi, he freaked me out because he looks so much like Michael.
Oh, that's gotta be weird.
And so many of them, their physicality, which is not a lot you can change unless you do plastic surgery, but just the physical image of them. If they're too tall or too short or too this or too that, you go, ain't nobody gonna believe that. You can't even lose yourself for a second with the way some people look. But with Navi, yeah, he's got it, and especially in the eyes. That's really a tell-all because most of them will put on the sunglasses so that you don't see their eyes.
Right.
They don't want to take the sunglasses off because they know it doesn't look like Michael.
Right, right. That's amazing. So, other than that, what else? During the pandemic, like, do you feel like you're getting a break, and now that you're doing a YouTube channel, and you're not, you're not touring right now, or do you miss touring? Or like, how do you feel about this time, this break?
Um, for the first 2 months, I just sat in the corner and sucked my thumb and go, how the hell am I going to pay my bills? But at some point, it shifted, and I kind of see it like a sabbatical, and I'm doing all
Right,
the things I should have been doing all along, but I was too busy traveling. Um, and after 30 years of misconnections and broken guitars and all the crap that can go wrong when you tour, I'm really relishing this time. And in August, I launched an event called Guitar Cloud Symposium. And it's a 4-day event where people come through Zoom all over the world. On the launch, I had Neely Brosh, Gretchen Mann, myself, Vicky Genfan, who does acoustic guitar and tapping.
she's with the a tribute band. I'm trying to remember was that from
Oh,
tribute?
no.
Oh, I was thinking that she's with. Who does she play with, Greg? Why does that name sound so familiar?
I don't know. But she does a live thing every Thursday morning on her front porch that you can go to her Vicky Genfan music page and check out what she does. She has a very original acoustic style that includes a lot of harmonics and tapping. And I've toured with all those guys. So they were at the launch, and I I formatted the thing like TED Talks, where everybody's modules are 20 minutes. So you can get 3 different subjects per hour, then Q&A time, and then the next teacher starts. So we have 24 different subjects in 18 hours, 4 teachers, lots of
Wow.
PDFs and videos and Q&A time and sponsor giveaways. So it's a real event. And then I have a special guest on the wrap party on Monday when everybody finds out what they won. I had Scott Henderson on the first one and Andy Timmons on the second one, and both Dweezil and Steve Vai have agreed to do future ones. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's a really cool thing, but it takes so much to put it together. I can only do it every 2 months. So on the off months, November 14th, I'm launching a new thing that's going to be a 1 day, like 7 hours, I think, called Deep Dives. And with that, um, we're doing themes, and the first theme is creating your own album. So I got Angela Petrilli, who's doing a thing on social media. She got a bachelor's in communications, and she's an expert in all that Instagram crap and all that. Um, and then Gretchen is doing a thing on doing a concept album and the organization that you have to do and hiring people, all that. Vicky is doing a deep dive into her uh, duos record. That so she's going to be talking about vocal arranging and collaborations, and then I'm doing a thing on how to make melodies come alive for an instrumental record. So that's the main focus of it, but it's there are other things involved within our modules. Like one of the things is uncluttering your tracks, because now that everybody has unlimited tracks, it's like, oh, let's put everything on every track all the time. You know?
Right.
So
Wow, that sounds
I'm
like.
excited about that. We're gearing up to that right now.
I was just curious too. Do you sing?
No, I don't. You know what? I when I was 18, I spent months learning Led Zeppelin and Doobie Brothers and Allman Brothers songs and gave a concert for my friends. And everything was cool until I had an audience and my throat closed up, and all of a sudden I couldn't reach notes that I could before. And I listened to the audio the next day and I stopped singing for 20 years. And I thought, man, I got to get something together. So I focused on guitar. And then when I was with Jeff, there's a song called Rollin' and Tumblin', Muddy Waters song that he recorded. And I volunteered to sing it because a friend of mine in a Canadian company called IVL said that he showed me a new product that was coming out. This was years, well, over 20 years ago now. That was one of the first vocal processors where it had pitch correct. You could choose the vibrato. You could make yourself sound like Elvis or whatever. And I thought, great, I need it for this tour. But it wasn't ready in time for the tour, so I had to use my own voice. You know,
How did that work out?
well, it was really strange because some days it felt great. And there's something freeing about being on stage with Jeff Beck and not having a guitar on. So I had this whole other instrument, and it was a different thing. Um,
Wow.
but
Anything on YouTube on that?
say it again.
Anything on YouTube with that? You singing?
I hope not.
Do you
This
think that
was
it helped?
before the smartphone. It's before everybody in the audience was going like this and not paying attention.
Now, do you feel like it held you back at all with anything? Like, did anybody ever make you feel, you know, you need to sing, you need to sing backup, or did you feel
Yeah,
like it held you back, with
yeah.
music?
Michael Jackson heard my first record and said, "You need to sing." And I thought, you know what? If I can't sound like Shaka Khan, why bother? And
So,
that's kind of my motto. So I try to sing through the guitar.
did he try to push you into it, or say, let's get you in the, let's try to make it happen? Let me hire you a vocal instructor. I don't know. Did he ever try to make you, um, or at least try to hear how you sounded
No,
before? No, he didn't push you into anything.
oh no,
Right, right. That's interesting. So you just put your foot down and said, no, I'm not a singer, and that's it.
yeah. I mean, not with him. It wasn't. It was actually a conversation that came through somebody else. So I didn't talk to him directly about my record. I only wanted him to hear it because I did a version of "Wanna Be Starting Something" on it that was instrumental.
Now, did he support any of your like original music or things that like
No,
creative ideas that you wanted to do on your own? No.
no, he had his hands full. Believe me.
Yeah, so it was his. He had his own thing, and I'm sure that other people wanted help from him too. So it's probably
Like everybody. Yeah, I
everybody.
wasn't going to get into his face. I mean, I was so grateful to have the gig. I wasn't one of those people that, oh, now I know a famous person. Let me see what I can
Exactly.
get out of them, right?
Right, right. That's usually the way the world works. Now, feel like being with that being said, what do you think is for your life successful? Like, what do you think success is? Do you feel like you've already been successful and that's it, or what is your idea of being like successful? Maybe something personally, or some people are successful if they have a family and kids and a house, and everybody has their own definition of what success is. You know,
Yeah, and the thing is, it's a moving target. It's
yeah, constantly changing.
yeah. I mean, when I got the Jackson gig and I celebrated my 30th birthday uh, in the ocean with the band in Australia on a rented yacht, having shrimps on the Barbie, I thought that's success. I have arrived. But then the
Right, right,
tour's over, the money's gone, and then you got to reinvent, reinvent, reinvent for the rest of your life.
right,
It's a very rare thing that you get a band like, I don't know, Toto or Van Halen that sticks together throughout the years and has enough talent to keep putting hits out.
right,
You
right.
know,
Or
yeah.
Aerosmith is
I mean,
yeah,
I'll tell you the most rewarding stuff to me is when I've had a good show. And if people come up, it's one thing if they like the show, but if they come up and say they were inspired by it, then that's a success.
right, right. So it's more than money or like they
Well,
realize
money's a tough one. Money's a really tough one because you can be one of the greatest artists in the world, like Alan Holdsworth, right? He was probably he's at a level most people don't even understand. But, the musicality was here and the money was here. And
right,
that's what really damages people mentally when you're having a scuffle paying your bills because you're so right brained that 99% of your time is spent on music, and most musicians are shit at the business side of it. And I am too, and I'm in a space where I'm trying to get the Guitar Cloud Symposium off the ground, and I realize I need people with different talents in that field because I'm putting ads out. I'm just pulling them out my butt. I have no idea what's gonna hit.
so
So
you don't
far,
have any.
we've got students, and all the students are coming back now for every time, which I did not expect. So there you
Do
go.
you get satisfaction from teaching?
Sorry, you cut
Teaching.
out. Say it again.
Do you get satisfaction from teaching and helping other people?
Yeah, I. It really depends on the student. I don't do that much one-on-one teaching, but if I have somebody that I can see them grow and I see that they're into it and they're putting time into it, then that fires me up. And then a lot of times I will spend another half hour or an hour after the lesson collecting things for them and giving them YouTube links because I'm inspired. But I prefer doing groups. Like I've done thousands of workshops and clinics around the world, and it's more like a show where now I do multimedia because I do have a solo show where I play in sync with films. So the clinics are like that too, where I'll play a tune and then I'll explain the techniques and sounds that I used within that. And then this symposium that I'm doing is 2.0. It's taking it to a whole other level because with the six subjects that each teacher does, I'm taking six things that I'm passionate about, like brain science, the app called Transcribe, making melodies come alive, anything, intervallics, tapping, all that stuff that I'm really into. If I'm excited about it, students are going to be excited about it.
Everybody else like amped up about it, right? Right. That's true. So, do you have any regrets, like in choices or anything, throughout your career?
Sure. It always kills me when you hear actresses go, "Oh, I have no regrets. Everything happened the way it should be." I call bullshit. There's so many decisions you make in your life that you go, "Oh man, that was a really bad decision."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a list in front of me, but yeah.
Yeah. And as far as like mistakes on stage, how do you handle them? Like when you're playing in front of people, do you make a mistake and keep going? Do you stop? Do you get busted? Do you ever have a day where you're just like you're just fumbling?
Sure.
And how do you professionally handle it? Like master it? Do you keep moving forward and stumbling? And
You put on your poker face and pretend nothing's wrong and just plow through it. If you there are times when the right and left hand just don't want to talk to each other and you are fumbling. And I think the best thing that you can do is take deep breaths because it gets more oxygen into your brain, especially if you make a big mistake. A lot of people will say, just play it 3 times the same way. And it's a lot of times you really don't want to do that. You know, if
Right.
you have a horrible mistake. But what I will do is instead of panic, because the tendency is to panic and then play a lot of notes and just try to cover it up like a dog's bone. But the best thing that you can do is take a deep breath because it gets oxygen in your brain and calms you down and helps you think more clearly.
Right.
Yeah,
It's not the end
it's
of
whole
the
gigs
world.
that just suck, and it's going to be the same for everybody. There's venues where the sound is just horrible, or there's, you know,
No
the
control over it, right? A lot of times you don't have any control over the sound, right?
yeah, you never do. You never do
Right.
because even if you played in a venue that sounded good a month ago, uh, maybe you have, I don't know, 200 people the first day and 50 people the next. The sound is going to be completely different.
Right. That must be frustrating. So you don't know when until you're out on that stage what's going to happen, basically, sound wise,
That's
or
right. Yeah, I mean, anybody that's had any stage time will tell you that there are so many times where sound check is just great and the show just sucks. For, there's 1,000 different reasons why that can happen, or vice versa. Where the sound check, I remember one sound check I did that was just so boomy with an empty room that I was doing a clinic and I could hardly hear my tracks. And they mounted the speakers in the floor, so they were coming up into the atmosphere, and it was just horrible. All of a sudden, I go out to play the show, there's a crowd there, and it sounded great.
yeah, that's right. So there was a guy named Keith Bennett. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He was the manager for the Beatles, the promoter for the Beatles. Hey Jude, he was with Apple Records, and then it, trying to remember the name of the record company. It turned into another record company, Avco,
Yeah.
and he worked with. He promoted Michael Jackson's, helped promote Michael Jackson's Thriller, and he. Anyway, I wound up being friends with him, and he had passed on, but he used to say that every connection that you make, whether it's the homeless person or Elvis Presley, like whoever it is, it doesn't matter. He always valued everybody he met
Yeah.
because you never know in life what connection you can you can make. You might put those two people together, or something may come of it, or so he always treated everybody like he was they were special basically. And
Well, yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to be treated like that? And the music world is so small that if you burn a bridge in the beginning, that shit will come back around and bite you in the ass for sure. Yeah.
right, so
On
as
that
far as
note, I'm sorry, but I have another interview coming up I got to prep for.
okay, I'm sorry to take up so much time. I didn't even notice the time, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time out, and it was great. I had so many questions, and I just kind of was wumbling, but thank you, and I guess that ends that.
Yeah,
um,
I'll send you the video.
oh, excellent! Thank you so much. It was
Okay.
great meeting. All
Okay,
right,
take care.
bye.
Bye.